TUPAC Shakur, a towering figure in hip-hop, left an indelible mark with his fiery lyrics and unapologetic voice. His 1996 death remains shrouded in mystery, fueling theories of assassination or survival. Today, we step beyond speculation into a chilling spiritual account from a former gang member, a man who was shot to death. He later claimed that he descended into hell, where he witnessed Tupac enduring unimaginable torment. This testimony isn't about pointing fingers. It's an urgent call to face the eternal consequences of our choices. Stay to the end to discover how he was snatched from darkness and charged with a mission to save souls. Subscribe to join thousands seeking God's truth, and comment with your name and city to declare your faith before heaven. Let's dive into this testimony. My name is Don, born into the chaos of Chicago's streets. Life was a war zone, with gunfire echoing through alleys and blood-staining concrete. At 12, with no parents to guide me, I found a family in a gang where loyalty was preached but rarely kept. Betrayal, I learned, cut deeper than any bullet. The gang shaped me, hardening my heart into stone. I fought, stole, and hurt others, believing I ruled my world. Hatred fueled me, my fists and gun my only language. Yet I was blind, a pawn in a game I didn't understand, unaware of the trap tightening around me. One humid night, unease gnawed at me, a warning I ignored. A gang brother, his eyes shifty, set me up for a deal that felt wrong. Meeting a stranger in a dark alley, I reached for my lighter, my hand barely out of my pocket. A blue flash exploded, sulfur stinging my nose, and 2 bullets ripped through my chest, dropping me to the cold ground. As I lay there, blood pooling, the world faded. My life, short and brutal, seemed to end in that alley. But this was no end. It was the beginning of a journey into a realm beyond imagination. The darkness that swallowed me was only a doorway to what awaited. Consciousness returned, but not to the alley. A suffocating darkness engulfed me, not mere absence of light, but a living entity coiling around me like a serpent. It was cold, heavy, pressing against my soul, stripping away all sense of safety. I fell through an endless void, no ground beneath, no sound, just a chilling silence that clawed at my mind. The silence broke with a laugh, sharp and malevolent, slicing through the void. Screams followed, raw and desperate, a chorus of anguish from unseen souls. My descent slowed, and I landed in a realm alien to Earth, where hope was a forgotten word. The air was thick, rancid with sulfur, burning my throat with each breath. The ground was jagged, glowing faintly red, cutting into my feet as I stood. A vast expanse stretched before me, lit by flickering flames in the distance, casting eerie shadows. The screams grew louder, blending with the clank of chains and a low, guttural hum, like the pulse of a dying beast. This wasn't a dream, it was a reality more vivid than life. An unseen force tugged me forward, my steps heavy, as if wading through tar. Shadows moved in the periphery, their eyes glinting like embers, watching, waiting. The darkness wasn't empty, it lived, whispering my sins, my failures, my pride. I sensed I'd crossed a threshold, entering a place where light had never reached. The air grew denser, the stench of decay mingling with sulfur, stinging my eyes. The ground pulsed, its heat searing through me, sweat mixing with dread. I saw faint figures in the distance, trudging in endless lines, their steps burdened by an unspoken verdict. The weight of this place pressed on me, a warning of its permanence. I wanted to scream, to run, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the void. The darkness tightened, a cold grip on my soul, accusing me of every wrong. My life flashed before me, every choice, every sin, undeniable and damning. I knew then I was in hell, and the horrors were just beginning. The screams intensified, some shrill, others deep, a symphony of eternal suffering. The ground burned hotter, steam hissing, the air thick with despair. Shadows closed in, their laughter a grating rasp, clawing at my sanity. This realm was alive, its purpose clear, to punish, to reveal, to consume. As I moved deeper, the darkness seemed to know me, its whispers growing personal, taunting my past. The ground shifted, coals grinding, the heat a constant assault. The reality of my fate sank in, a truth I couldn't escape. Yet a faint spark of fear drove me to pray, a wordless plea for mercy in a place that knew none. The air scorched my skin, a blistering heat that overwhelmed my senses. Before me lay massive pits of fire, glowing red, each a cauldron of writhing souls, their screams piercing the air. Flames licked their flesh, burning without end, a torment that never consumed. Demons prowled, their scales glinting, eyes blazing like furnaces, claws sharp and cruel, enforcing a justice both precise and merciless. In one pit, a man hung upside down, his tongue torn out, blood dripping into the flames. A woman gagged on acid, her throat blistering, forced to drink for her drunken sins. Another soul was buried in giant maggots, their teeth ripping flesh, his muffled screams a haunting echo. Each punishment fit the crime, a reflection of choices made in life, undeniable and eternal. The ground was a mosaic of coals and blood, steaming, slicing my feet with each step. The stench was unbearable, sulfur blending with rotting meat, clinging to my skin. Demons laughed, their rasping voices mocking the soul's despair, their joy a sickening contrast to the suffering. The air pulsed, heavy with malice, crushing any flicker of hope. I saw a soul claw at a pit's edge, his eyes wild with desperation. A demon seized him, slamming him back, flames roaring higher, his scream a raw plea for mercy that never came. The punishment was relentless, a cycle of pain without respite. The weight of their guilt mirrored my own, a truth I couldn't deny. The pits glowed brighter, steam rising, the heat a living force, searing my flesh. Screams formed a constant wail, burrowing into my soul, a sound I'd never unhear. Demons moved with purpose, their claws glinting, eyes locked on their prey, relishing every cry. The cavern's walls loomed, black and jagged, dripping with a foul ooze that hissed on the ground. A young boy burned, his face twisted, punished for murders committed in rage. His cries were desperate, but the flames didn't waver, his fate sealed. The air grew thicker, the stench of blood and fire choking me, my throat raw. An unseen force held me, demanding I witness this justice, this consequence. The demon's laughter echoed, a cruel blade mocking the soul's torment. The ground shifted, coals cutting deeper, the heat unbearable, sweat stinging my eyes. Their eyes, hollow with regret, stared back, reflecting an eternity of pain. The air was suffocating, the reality of hell sinking into my bones. This was no accident, it was deliberate, a verdict for every sin. The flames roared, the screams rang, the stench clung, a cycle without end. My sins flashed before me, my violence, my pride, my rebellion, all leading here. A faint prayer formed, a plea for escape, drowned by the pit's relentless roar. A demon loomed, its frame towering, eyes like burning coals, claws dripping with dark oil. It grabbed me, its grip icy, dragging me across the burning ground, coals scorching my legs. A whip of fire lashed my back, each strike a blaze of agony, my flesh blistering, healing, then burning again. A red-hot spear pierced my chest, the pain searing my soul deeper than any physical wound. Its voice boomed, accusing me of pride, of mocking God's call. I'd scorned preachers, laughed at faith, called it weakness. Each lash was for my arrogance, each stab for my rebellion. The air was thick, smelling of charred flesh and sulfur, the heat crushing my spirit. I was hurled into a pit, its walls slick with black slime, the floor glowing red. The whip cracked again, flames biting my back, my screams lost in the pit's roar. The demon's laughter was a blade, its eyes gleaming with cruel joy. My sins weighed heavy, the reason for every blow, undeniable. The ground burned, steam hissing, the stench of rotten blood choking me. I tried to stand, but the whip struck harder, forcing me down. The spear pierced deeper, the pain of fire consuming my soul. The air pulsed with malice, the demon's presence a weight I couldn't escape. My life replayed moments of defiance, of turning from God's voice. Each choice led here, to this pit, this torment. The flames roared, the whip cracked, the stench clung, a cycle without end. I was alone, my pride stripped, my soul bare, facing the cost of my sins. The demon circled, its claws glinting, its grin mocking my pain. The ground shifted, coals cutting deeper, the heat searing, sweat mixing with blood. The screams of others blended with mine, a chorus of despair. A faint plea for mercy formed, but the pain drowned it, the demon's laughter louder. This was my fate, earned by my rebellion, my refusal to heed God's call. The whip struck again, flames biting, the spear piercing, the torment eternal. The walls closed in, dripping slime, the stench overwhelming, my soul aching under justice's weight. Yet, a spark of hope flickered, a cry for God's grace in this hopeless place. As I stumbled through the fiery cavern, a figure caught my eye, distinct amid the chaos. He knelt on a jagged stone, his head shaved, skin scarred by burns, eyes brimming with anguish. It was TUPAC Shakur, the rapper whose music had been my anthem, now broken, bound by glowing red chains. His presence shocked me, a stark contrast to the defiant star I'd idolized, his torment a mirror of this place's cruelty. The chains burned into his flesh, steam hissing, the stench of charred skin mixing with sulfur. Tupac's voice, once powerful, was faint, repeating, "I love Biggie, I love Biggie." His words carried a weight of regret, a confession of the feud that defined his life. A demon towered over him, its scales glinting, claws dripping, its laughter a grating rasp that echoed off the walls, mocking his pain. The ground glowed red, sharp coals cutting my feet as I stood frozen, watching. Tupac's torment was not just physical, his mind was a prison, replaying his rivalry with Biggie Smalls, the hate he'd fueled, the violence his words inspired. The chains tightened, his cries raw, blending with the pit's wail, a sound that pierced my heart. I saw his legacy, once a blaze of glory, now ash in this eternal fire. The demon struck him, claws raking his side, flames leaping from the wounds. Tupac staggered, his body trembling, tears streaming down his scarred face, his strength gone. The air was thick, the heat unbearable, sweat stinging my eyes, the stench of blood and rot choking me. His pain was a warning, a reflection of the influence he'd wielded, the millions he'd led astray. I remembered nights blasting his music, his voice fueling my anger, my rebellion. His defiance had shaped me, his lyrics my creed, but here that creed was torment. The demon's eyes glowed, relishing Tupac's suffering, its claws ready for another strike. The ground shifted, steam hissing, the flames roaring, a relentless assault on my senses. Tupac's eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition, then despair. He tried to speak, but the chains burned brighter, silencing him, his pain a testament to his sins. The cavern's walls loomed, dripping with black ooze, the stench clinging, my soul heavy with his fate. I saw his fans, millions still chanting his name, blind to this truth, their paths teetering on the same edge. The demon laughed louder, its voice a blade, cutting through Tupac's cries. The flames pulsed, the air suffocating, the screams a constant roar, drowning any hope. I felt his regret, a weight I carried, his music's impact now clear in this pit. This was real, a consequence of choices, a fate I could share if I didn't change. I wanted to reach out, to ease his suffering, but I stood powerless, a witness to his eternal torment. The chains glowed hotter, Tupac's cries weaker, his body shaking, the cycle unending. The walls seemed alive, pulsing, the stench overwhelming, my heart aching for him. A faint prayer formed, a plea for mercy, not just for him, but for me, for all who follow his path. The scene burned into me, a lesson I couldn't unsee. Tupac's torment was a mirror, reflecting the cost of pride, of hate, of influence misused. The demon circled, its claws glinting, its joy a sickening sight, the flames roaring higher. The air grew denser, the stench of fire and decay choking me, my throat raw, my soul burdened by this truth. As I watched, the cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, the screams louder. Tupac's face, once bold, was now a mask of regret, his eyes pleading for a rest that never came. The ground burned, coals slicing deeper, the stench clinging, a constant reminder of this place's reality. I knew I had to carry this warning, to share his fate, to wake others before they fell here. The demon's laughter faded slightly, but the chains didn't loosen, Tupac's torment relentless. I felt a pull, an urging to move on, to see more, to understand the full weight of this place. The air stung, the flames roared, the stench lingered, but the image of Tupac stayed with me, a call to change, to warn. I stepped forward, the ground burning, my soul marked by his pain, ready to face what lay ahead. The cavern widened into a realm unlike anything I'd seen before, vast and suffocating, where twisted iron spires reached endlessly into a sky choked with smoke and shadow. The air hung thick with ash and rot, and every breath I took burned with sulfur and something worse, regret. The heat rose in invisible waves, not from fire alone, but from the anguish embedded in the very stone beneath my feet. This was a place where betrayal was not just punished, it was displayed. Each of the towering spires served as a prison, built not from bricks, but from condemnation. Suspended from their jagged arms were cages, hundreds of them dangling like cursed fruit. Within each cage burned a soul, not just in flame, but in memory, in shame, in a horror that repeated itself endlessly. These were not the ignorant. These were the ones who once knew the truth and traded it willingly for the worship of men. The first soul I saw was a preacher, once adored by thousands. His voice had thundered from pulpits, promising blessings in exchange for donations, twisting scripture to feed his empire. Now his tongue was aflame, melting and regenerating over and over, his throat forever scorched from the lies he once spoke so boldly. His cage swayed violently, flames licking at his feet, and above him a plaque read, "Fed my pride, not their souls." Not far from him hung a musician, his body chained in silence. I recognized his face from magazine covers, music videos, sold-out concerts. Once praised for pushing boundaries, now he was pushed to the edge of sanity. Demons slithered around his cage, taunting him with melodies he once wrote, now twisted into perversions. Each note, once applauded, had become a whip across his soul. Then came a politician, his mouth gagged with molten gold. He had climbed through corruption, shaking hands with darkness for power. His speeches had stirred nations, but now his voice was only a muffled scream beneath layers of greed turned solid and burning. His hands were chained to scrolls of his own laws that had legalized death and outlawed truth. And then the air shifted. I saw her. A woman whose beauty had once dazzled the world, now reduced to scorched flesh and cracked bones. Her face, once flawless, bore scars that pulsed with every scream. She had been an icon, flashing symbols of rebellion, sensuality, and darkness without remorse. Now she clawed desperately at her cage, her fingernails torn, sobbing for a second chance. Her perfume had once drawn millions, now the stench of burning hair and rotting pride surrounded her. As I stood trembling, a voice spoke, not from above, not from behind, but from within the very walls around me. It was the voice of holiness, sorrowful but final. They knew me. They saw me, but they chose the stage over the altar, applause over repentance, smoke over spirit. And then I saw what they saw. Visions flashed like fire through smoke, moments when each of these souls had been convicted, warned, even visited by the Spirit of God. I saw one artist tear a page from a Bible and laugh, a preacher turn off the voice of God to accept a television contract, a celebrity deny Christ publicly to gain a global endorsement. Each decision etched a mark on their souls, marks that had now become chains. Demons moved like shadows made flesh. They weren't in a rush, they were savoring the pain. One demon stopped in front of a cage and hissed. He once said, "God is just another name for energy. Now feel what real power tastes like." And the cage erupted in fire again. Another demon climbed a spire like a spider, whispering accusations through the bars. "Did they worship you? Do they remember your name?" it asked a writhing soul. "No, but we do." I saw cages made of contract scrolls that bound their victims with fire ink signatures. One man's cage was forged entirely from golden trophies, now melted and reshaped to pierce his body at every joint. Another woman's cage had mirrors on every side, forcing her to watch herself decay for eternity, her own vanity, now her prison. The smell was unbearable, burned plastic, seared flesh, perfume curdled into poison. I coughed, staggered, and felt my own skin prickle under the weight of memory. Times I had longed to be known. Times I had wished people feared my name. Times I had considered compromise. And I wept. Then the holy voice returned, closer now, with an ache like thunder held back. "Warn them. The soul is not a product. My glory cannot be bought. I turned, but not before locking eyes with a man I once listened to. His podcasts had fascinated me. Now his mouth was torn open, whispering I thought I was free. His cage dripped with black slime, and demons surrounded it, chanting false doctrines he had once preached. Behind me, the spires groaned as if alive. The iron bent under the weight of divine wrath. The cages rattled with new desperation as I backed away, and for a fleeting moment, I could hear what no one else would. The silence of mercy that would never come. One last voice reached me, a woman, face half burned, voice hoarse but clear. "Don't be silent. Tell them we were warned." And then a whisper, colder than fire, softer than regret. "Run." And I did. The cavern shifted, leading me to a new terror, where the air vibrated with a piercing screech, like metal scraping flesh. A colossal iron mill loomed, its gears glowing red, turning with a relentless rhythm, grinding souls fed into its jaws. Their tongues were pulled out, crushed, then regrown, a cycle of agony for words that destroyed lives. The stench was sickening, blood and burning flesh mixing with sulfur, choking my throat, stinging my eyes. A holy figure appeared, its voice steady. These used their tongues to lie, slander, curse, leading others to ruin. I saw a man, his face contorted, his tongue mangled, screaming as the mill crushed it again, punished for deceit that tore families apart. Among them was a friend from my youth, once a preacher, now burning for sermons laced with hate, his cries raw, echoing through the cavern. The ground glowed, coals cutting deep, steam hissing, the heat searing my feet. The mill's roar was deafening, blending with the wails, a symphony of torment that shook the air. Demons operated it, their scales glinting, eyes glowing like lanterns, claws guiding each soul with cruel precision, their laughter a grating rasp. The air was thick, the stench of rotten fire overwhelming, my throat burning, my heart heavy with the weight of their sins. Each punishment was exact, a reflection of words that wounded, deceived, destroyed. I saw a woman, her voice once sweet, now a scream, her tongue crushed for gossip that ruined lives. Her cries were desperate, her hands clawing the air, finding no escape, her regret palpable. The ground shifted, hot and jagged, the heat a living force, burning through me, sweat mixing with dread. The demons' laughter mocked her pain, their claws ready, their eyes relishing her torment. The air pulsed, heavy with despair, the mill's rhythm a constant verdict, unyielding. I remembered my own words, harsh insults, lies told to save face, their weight now clear in this place. The walls loomed, dripping with slime, the stench clinging, my soul aching under the truth of this justice. This was a consequence for every careless word, every curse, every lie. The screams grew louder, the mill grinding relentlessly, the flames roaring, the cycle unending. Demons moved with glee, their eyes locked on their prey, their joy a sickening sight, claws glinting in the firelight. The ground burned, steam rising, the stench of blood and fire choking me, my throat raw, my heart racing. I prayed, a faint whisper, for forgiveness for my own tongue, for strength to warn others. I saw another soul, a man who'd used words to incite violence, his tongue crushed repeatedly, his screams raw, his eyes wide with regret. His life had been power, his voice a weapon, but here, it was his chain. The air grew denser, the stench overwhelming, the mill's roar a constant reminder of justice. The demons circled, their laughter a blade, their claws ready, relishing the pain they inflicted. The cavern seemed to close in, the heat pressing closer, the screams louder, the stench clinging. I saw more souls, each a story of words misused, of lives destroyed by their tongues. The ground shifted, coals slicing deeper, the heat searing, the air thick with despair. The holy figure's voice lingered, urging me to see, to remember, to carry this warning to the living. This furnace was a lesson, a mirror of the tongue's power, its cost. The flames pulsed, the screams rang, the stench clung, a cycle without end. I felt the weight of my own words, their potential to lead here, the reality sinking deep. I prayed again, for wisdom, for a tongue that speaks life, for courage to share this truth. As I stood before the mill, the holy presence steadied me, its voice a guide through the horror. The screams faded slightly, but the mill's rhythm didn't stop. a relentless verdict. The air stung, the flames roared, the stench lingered, but the voice urged me forward to see more, to understand fully. I moved on, the ground burning, my soul marked by this furnace, a mission to warn growing stronger. The cavern opened to a grotesque sight, a river, not of water, but of thick, red blood, flowing with chunks of flesh, its surface rippling with despair. Souls floundered within, their screams muffled, their bodies twisting in the relentless current, unable to escape. Unborn children floated, their tiny forms glowing faintly, their silent cries a haunt weight on my soul. The air was heavy, smelling of blood and decay, the heat a crushing wave, choking my breath, stinging my eyes. A holy voice whispered, "This is for those who killed for convenience or gain, who shed innocent blood." Women were bound to rocks along the banks, small demons, childlike but grotesque, tearing at their flesh, their screams raw, echoing through the cavern. The river's stench was overwhelming, blood and rot mixing with sulfur, a sickening assault on my senses. The ground was slick, steaming, cutting deep, the heat searing my feet, a constant reminder of this place's justice. I saw a woman, her face contorted, her body ravaged, punished for abortions chosen for ease, her regret palpable. Her cries were desperate, her hands clawing the rock, finding no escape, the demons relentless in their assault. The air pulsed, thick with despair, the river's flow a constant judgment, unyielding. The demons' laughter was cruel, their claws glinting, their eyes glowing, relishing her torment, a sickening sight. The holy figure held me, its presence steady, urging me to look, to understand the weight of these sins. The unborn's cries pierced me, a weight I couldn't bear, their loss an eternal wound in this place. The ground shifted, blood pooling, the heat unbearable, sweat mixing with tears, my throat raw. This was a consequence, a price for lives taken, a truth I couldn't turn from. I saw a man, his body sinking in the river, punished for murders committed in my city's streets, his screams raw, the current pulling him under. His life had been violence, his hands stained, but here he paid with eternal torment. The air grew denser, the stench of blood and fire choking me, my heart heavy with his fate. The demons circled, their eyes locked on him, their joy a grotesque contrast to his pain. The river roared, its current relentless, the screams blending into a wail, a chorus of despair. The cavern's walls loomed, dripping with red slime, the stench clinging, my soul aching under the weight of this vision. I felt the weight of my own violence, my hands stained by gang life, the reality of this river hitting me hard. I prayed, a faint plea for mercy, for strength to warn others of this fate. I saw more souls, each a story of bloodshed, of lives taken for selfish gain. A woman screamed, her body torn by demons, punished for choosing convenience over life, her regret a fire of its own. The ground burned, the heat searing, the air thick with despair, the stench overwhelming. The holy voice lingered, urging me to see, to carry this warning, to wake the living to this truth. The unborn floated past, their forms faint, their silent cries a call to repentance, to change. The river's flow was unending, a verdict for every life stolen, every choice made in darkness. The demons' laughter echoed, their claws ready, their eyes glowing, a relentless force of torment. The air stung, the heat pulsed, the stench clung, but the holy presence steadied me, guiding me through this horror. This river was a mirror, reflecting the cost of violence, of lives discarded. The screams rang, the flames roared, the stench lingered, a cycle without end. I felt small, exposed, my own sins flashing before me, the reality of this place sinking deep. I prayed again for forgiveness, for courage to share this vision, to save others from this river. As I stood by the blood-soaked banks, the holy figure's voice urged me forward, to see more, to understand fully. The screams faded slightly, but the river's roar didn't stop, a relentless verdict. The air stung, the heat pressed closer, the stench clung, but the voice guided me, a mission to warn growing within me. I moved on, the ground burning, my soul marked by this river, ready to face what lay ahead. As despair threatened to swallow me, a radiant light erupted, pure and blinding, slicing through the darkness like a blade. I felt a pull, like a rope from heaven, lifting me from the pit, the flames fading below. A voice spoke, warm and firm, "Dawn, my son." The torment stopped, the screams softened, replaced by a peace so profound it overwhelmed me, a mercy I couldn't comprehend. The light enveloped me, showing my life like a film, every moment, every sin laid bare. My lies, my violence, my pride flashed before me, undeniable, a weight I couldn't bear. Yet the voice didn't condemn, it offered repentance, a chance I didn't deserve, a love that broke me. The air cleared, the stench of hell replaced by a faint scent of flowers, sweet and pure, a breath of life. I rose higher, the pit shrinking, its fires a distant glow, the screams a faint echo. The voice's love was a force, rebuilding my soul, filling me with hope, with purpose. The darkness was gone, the weight lifted, my soul lightened by grace I hadn't earned. I knew I'd been spared, pulled from a fate I'd walked into, a miracle beyond words. The light grew brighter, warm and alive, wrapping me in comfort, healing my scars. My sins remained, but the voice's grace covered them, urging me to change, to live differently. The air was clean, the screams silenced, the reality of salvation sinking deep into my bones. I prayed, a whisper of gratitude, vowing to honor this mercy, to carry this truth. The ascent continued, the light steady, a beacon guiding me upward, away from the pit. The horrors of hell lingered, but the voice's promise was stronger, a call to warn others, to save them. The air vibrated, holy and calm, my soul marked by this moment, this rescue. I felt chosen, not for my worth, but for His love, a mission forming within me. I saw glimpses of my life, moments I'd ignored God's call, now clear in the light of His mercy. Each choice, each rebellion, had led to that pit, but this light was my second chance, my redemption. The air sang, the fragrance of heaven clinging to me, a reminder of His grace. I prayed again for strength, for boldness, for a life that reflects this love. The light pulsed alive, a force that anchored me, a promise of what awaited the faithful. The screams of hell were gone, replaced by a quiet peace, a stillness that soothed my soul. The weight of my sins lifted, my heart light, my purpose clear. I knew I'd return to earth not for myself, but for others, to share this vision, this mercy. As I rose, the light grew softer, warm, a gentle embrace, preparing me for what lay ahead. The voice's words echoed, a charge to speak, to warn, to live for Him. The air was sweet, the horrors fading, the reality of His love filling me. I felt renewed, my soul marked by this rescue, ready to carry this truth to the world. The ascent slowed, the light steady, a guide through the transition from death to life. I saw the pit below, a faint glow, a reminder of what I'd escaped, what others still faced. The air was clean, the fragrance of mercy lingering, my heart steady, my mission clear. I prayed once more for courage, for wisdom, for a life that honors this second chance. The light faded gently, the voice's presence lingering, a promise to guide me always. The horrors of hell were etched in me, but the mercy of God was stronger, a light that would never dim. The air was calm, my soul at peace, my purpose burning bright. I was ready to return, to warn, to save, to live for the one who pulled me from the pit. I stood in a realm of radiant light, before a figure whose hands bore nail scars, His presence a love so vast it overwhelmed me. I knew it was Jesus, His eyes deep with wisdom, seeing every corner of my soul, my sins, my hopes. He spoke, "You don't belong here yet, but I give you a chance, because I love you." His words were a charge, a call to warn the world of the pit I'd seen, the mercy I'd received. His touch was gentle, a warm light flowing through me, healing my soul's scars, filling me with courage. The air was sweet, fragrant with life, the light soft, radiant, soothing every wound. I asked for strength, for boldness to share His truth, to face the world with His message. He nodded, His eyes steady, promising to guide me, to never leave me, a vow that anchored my heart. The ground was smooth, glowing, a stark contrast to hell's burning coals. Angels surrounded us, their voices a soft praise, a heavenly chorus lifting my spirit, their light blending with His. The air pulsed, alive with His love, a force that steadied me, a purpose clear in my soul. I felt renewed, ready to return, to live for Him alone, to carry His warning to the world. Jesus spoke again, His voice like a river, calm yet powerful, urging me to go back, to speak of hell, of mercy, of the choice all must make. The air sang, the fragrance of heaven clinging to me, a reminder of his promise, his grace. I bowed, gratitude overwhelming, my soul marked by his love, his mission. This was my second chance, a call to save others from the pit, to lead them to this light. I saw glimpses of heaven, crystal rivers sparkling, fields of vibrant flowers swaying, their scent filling the air. The beauty was beyond words, a promise of what awaited those who chose him. The light pulsed, warm, alive, a beacon for my return, a guide for my mission. I prayed, a whisper of thanks, vowing to honor this moment, this calling with every breath. Jesus' presence lingered, his eyes steady, his love a weight I carried, a strength I'd draw on. The angels' praise grew softer, a gentle hum, their light a shield for my journey back. The air was clean, the ground cool, the horrors of hell a distant echo, replaced by this hope. I knew I'd face trials, but his promise was stronger, a vow to walk with me always. The realm of light seemed to expand, towers of pearl and gold gleaming, their surfaces catching the glow, reflecting his glory. The sky was radiant, no sun needed, the light coming from him, holy and warm. The air vibrated, filled with his presence, a peace that soaked into my soul. I felt his love, a force that broke me, rebuilt me, prepared me for the world. Jesus spoke once more, his words a charge to warn, to love, to live for him. The air sang, the fragrance of heaven a reminder of what I'd seen, what I'd share. I stood taller, my heart steady, my mission clear, a call to wake the blind, to point them to him. I was ready, my soul marked by this encounter, this grace, this purpose. The light softened, preparing me for my return, the transition from heaven to earth. Jesus' eyes met mine, a final assurance, his love a guide for every step. The air was calm, the angels' voices a faint echo, the ground steady beneath me. I prayed again for courage, for wisdom, for a life that reflects his light, his mercy. As the realm faded, Jesus' presence remained, a promise etched in my soul, a vow to guide me through the mission ahead. The air was sweet, the light lingering, the horrors of hell replaced by this hope, this calling. I felt whole, renewed, ready to return, to warn, to save, to live for the one who saved me. The transition began, the light guiding me back, my heart burning with his truth. I awoke in a hospital, machines beeping, my chest heavy with pain from the bullets that nearly ended me. Doctors called it a miracle, my survival defying their charts, but I knew the truth. God had pulled me from hell, given me a second chance. My body was broken, but my soul was light, free, the horrors of hell vivid, the mercy of Jesus clearer. I understood my purpose, to warn, to call others to the light, to save them from the pit I'd seen. I left the gang life, burning my old clothes, cutting ties with those who betrayed me. Prayer became my anchor, scripture my shield, their truth guiding me through temptation's pull. I felt Jesus' presence, his voice steady, giving me words to share my story, to speak of hell, of mercy. The hospital room faded, replaced by a mission to reach the lost, to wake the blind with my testimony. I wrote a book, From Hell to Hope, pouring out my vision of TUPAC, the river of blood, the mercy that saved me. I formed a group, helping others escape gangs, addiction, darkness, sharing my story in churches, streets, anywhere. My voice carries urgency, not for fame, but to save souls, to point them to Jesus, the one who pulled me from the fire. Every day I pray, study, live for him, my life a testament to his grace. The memory of hell's flames, TUPAC's cries, the river of blood drives me forward. I speak to youth, to gangs, to anyone who listen, warning of the eternal stakes, urging them to choose light. My heart is steady, my mission clear, a call to live differently, to honor the one who saved me. I live to lead others to his love, to keep them from the pit, to share the hope that changed me. Don's journey shakes us to the core, a raw glimpse into hell's terrors and heaven's mercy. He saw TUPAC in torment, faced his own sins, yet was saved by God's unearned grace. This isn't just his story, it's a warning for every soul still breathing. Are you choosing light or darkness? Share your thoughts with your name and city to stand for Christ before heaven. Next, we'll uncover another chilling day, a vision of Hitler's fate in hell, a story to stir your soul. Stay tuned, seek Jesus, and choose life. Amen. Hello and welcome back to Eternal Bible Stories. where I recount extraordinary near-death experiences sent in by our listeners. Today's story is about a man who was given a second chance by God. A few years ago, he had an out-of-body experience when he died and was taken to hell. He shared his story with me in incredible detail, and he even claimed to have seen a very famous religious figure while he was there. Trust me, you're going to be shocked when you find out who it is. So make sure to watch until the end to uncover the truth. This is one crazy story. So buckle up and let's dive right in. Hello, Eternal Bible Stories. First, I want to thank you for giving me the strength and motivation to share my story. Some of you may have heard it before, but many haven't, so I want to share it again to reach even more people. My name is Nathan. I'm 56 years old and I live in New York. I started using drugs at a very young age, around 10 years old. My parents had no idea. They never even suspected it. Who would think a 10-year-old would already be smoking weed, right? So it was easy to hide. In my neighborhood, there were some guys who were pretty gangster, if you want to call it that, and I spent a lot of time at their houses. Because of that, I drank with them a lot. But then I'd feel guilty. And sometimes I'd even tell them, hey, the Bible says we need to stay sober and avoid temptation. I grew up in a Christian family, knowing about the power of God, the power in the name of Jesus. But at the same time, I was tormented by demons from a young age. I was so terrified that I couldn't sleep with the lights off. I always kept them on, with my door open. This fear lasted until I was 17 or 18 years old. But in the end, I chose to rebel. I wanted to do everything everyone else was doing. Sex, drugs, partying. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway. And then, one night, I took too much methadone. That night changed my life forever. Methadone was the first thing I got hooked on, but it didn't take long before I switched to heroin. Once addiction had sunk its claws deep into my body, every single day revolved around just one question: how can I feel better? There was only a gnawing hunger in my veins, pushing me toward the next dose. When you're withdrawing, the only thing that matters is ending the pain, no matter the cost. I no longer went to work, no longer carried any responsibilities, and no longer cared about everything falling apart around me. I had completely lost myself without even realizing it. That day I crushed 5 Percocet pills, snorted them, then swallowed 10 more. Why did I do it? Because that was all I knew, all I wanted. At the time, the Obama administration was handing out unemployment benefits, and I was one of those people getting money in the mail without having to lift a finger. I didn't have to work, I just waited for the checks to arrive and did whatever I pleased. And the only thing I wanted was to sink deeper into my addiction. No goals, no hope. Just one escape, those pills. They were my only ticket to a place where I wouldn't feel anything anymore. As the drugs kicked in, I stumbled into the kitchen. I suddenly remembered the bottle of Everclear that someone had given me earlier. Why not drink? I had nothing else to do, no one to meet, nothing to lose. I unscrewed the cap, poured myself a double shot, and threw it back. A warm sensation slid down my throat, spreading through my body. I waited for a moment, then poured another one. I felt a little better, but not enough. So I drank again, and again. 5 or 6 double shots later, my head started spinning. Reality blurred, and I drifted into a hazy state between consciousness and hallucination. But then, in that exact moment, something changed. I walked into my bedroom and immediately felt the presence of death. No one needed to tell me, I just knew. The air thickened, like an invisible darkness slithering across my skin. Something was in the room with me, watching, waiting. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing in my skull. I wanted to believe it was just the alcohol and pills playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew the truth. It was there, and it had come for me. Panic surged through me. I forced out a desperate prayer. Jesus, please forgive my sins. But before I could even finish saying the word sins, a horrifying force yanked me downward. There was no time to fight, no chance to run. I was thrown into darkness, spiraling down through a tunnel that plunged deep into the earth. The air howled as if it were being torn apart, and something monstrous seized me from behind. It was enormous, beyond comprehension, and I was nothing more than a rag doll in its grasp. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Its overwhelming presence, its unshakable grip. It clutched me so tightly that I could hear my bones groan under the pressure. And beneath me, only hell awaited. I was ripped from my body like a leaf torn from its branch in the middle of a storm. There was no time to catch my breath, no moment to comprehend what was happening. An invisible force yanked me downward at an unimaginable speed, faster than anything I had ever experienced. I felt myself being hurled into a pitch-black tunnel, an abyss with no light, no gravity, only an all-consuming darkness, swallowing me whole. There was no peace, no sense of calm that people often associate with death. There was only pure, unfiltered terror. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt like it was being crushed, and no sound came out. I could only keep falling, with no idea where I would land. The tunnel's walls weren't made of stone. They were made of chained souls. They clung to the walls, their bodies stretched and contorted, as if they were an actual part of this nightmarish prison. I had no idea how long they had been there, but I could feel their despair, a torment that had no end. They wore all kinds of clothing, some in ancient robes, others in medieval attire, and some in modern-day outfits. From the time of Adam and Eve to the 2020s, every culture, every nationality, Americans, Asians, Middle Easterners, were all here. They screamed in agony, their cries echoing throughout the tunnel, forming a symphony of eternal suffering. They reached out toward me as if I were their last hope, their final chance at salvation. Their skeletal hands, skin stretched thin over brittle bones, grasped desperately at me, their fingernails broken and jagged as they clawed at my body. I tried to pull away, but I couldn't escape their touch. Their fingers, ice cold, scraped against my skin, leaving behind searing scratches that burned like fire. But the physical pain was nothing compared to what I felt inside. Because the moment they touched me, I knew everything about them. Not through words, not through images, but through a horrifying and unnatural connection, as if their very consciousness had been forcefully transferred into mine. In a single instant, I knew who they were, what they had done on Earth, and why they had ended up here. I felt their guilt, their fear, their overwhelming regret, as if their suffering had become my own. And no matter how different they had been in life, they all had one thing in common. They had rejected the truth. They had chosen the wrong path, and now they were paying the ultimate price, for eternity. I hit the ground, but it wasn't normal ground. It was a scorching, molten surface, hotter than anything I had ever felt. I screamed as the searing heat immediately burned into my skin. The air was thick with the nauseating stench of burning flesh, a suffocating, inescapable odor. I looked around, but all I saw was a nightmare beyond imagination. The damned souls writhed in agony, some torn apart by grotesque creatures, others crawling on the ground, their skin peeling, charred black like overcooked meat. Their agonized screams blended together into a horrific, unending melody, a sound that could never be forgotten. Before I could even begin to comprehend what was happening, the shadowy entity tightened its grip around me and dragged me forward once more. It didn't matter that my feet had touched the ground. I still had no control. I couldn't run. I couldn't fight back. I was completely powerless. Each step I took on the burning terrain sent fresh waves of pain shooting through me. But even that was nothing compared to the sheer terror consuming my mind. I had no idea where I was being taken, no clue what lay ahead, but a horrifying certainty gripped my soul. Whatever awaited me next would be even worse. The shadowy entity still refused to release me, dragging me through the dark, desolate roads of hell, a place where there was no sunlight, no hope, only eternal punishment. I had no idea where I was being taken, but when a massive castle loomed before me, I felt a sense of dread even greater than what I had experienced when I saw the chained souls. This castle was nothing like the ruined towers or scorched walls I had imagined hell to contain. It was strangely magnificent, yet haunting, with gleaming white stone walls, towering columns stretching high into the darkness, and a colossal gate reminiscent of King Arthur's era. The black wooden doors were adorned with huge metal rings, resembling the nose rings of a bull. It stood there, grand yet foreboding, as if it welcomed no one, yet allowed no one to leave. The entity dragged me toward the massive entrance, and without a sound, the doors swung open on their own. From within, a blinding light burst forth, so intense that I had to squint against its brightness. For a fleeting moment, a thought crossed my mind. Was this a different place? Was this not like the rest of hell? But the moment I stepped inside, I knew. This light was not divine. It was a deception. I looked down and found myself standing in a long, endless corridor, lined on both sides with stone prison cells. The false light from outside had completely vanished, replaced by a cold, oppressive atmosphere that made my skin crawl. There was no need for anyone to explain where I was, because the moment I entered, a horrifying understanding was forced into my mind, leaving no room for doubt. This was the place of punishment for those who had deceived others about God. This was the part of hell reserved for false religious leaders, for false prophets, for those who had led people astray and driven them away from true salvation. These were the people who had used God's name for their own gain, who had manipulated the faith of others to seek power, wealth, and personal glory. And now, they were trapped in the very web of lies they had spun in life. As I walked past the endless rows of prison cells, I saw them. Figures draped in ornate robes, adorned in the garments of priests, ministers, and religious leaders. These were the very people who, on earth, had been revered as spiritual guides, as those who were meant to shepherd souls toward righteousness. But here, there were no iron bars, no chains binding them physically, yet none of them could leave. Their regret was the chain that bound them, anchoring them to this place for eternity. I could feel the depth of their despair. They knew exactly what they had done. They knew they had deceived millions, and now they knew they could never escape this fate. I continued walking through the endless hall of cells, my eyes scanning the twisted, tormented faces of those imprisoned here. Their expressions were contorted with the agony of the soul, their hollow eyes brimming with the bitter realization of their sins. And then I stopped. My heart froze in my chest as I saw a man. He was different. There was something about him that held my gaze, something that made it impossible to look away. I didn't recognize him, but in that moment, I knew he was important. I didn't know who he was, but deep inside I had the unmistakable feeling that soon I would find out. The man standing before me was dressed in a distinctly 19th century outfit, the style reminiscent of the colonial era. His appearance evoked the image of a powerful figure, a man of high social status in his time, but now he was nothing more than a lost soul in hell. The moment my eyes met his hollow, empty gaze, an invisible force pulled me into another scene, as if I had been yanked straight into his memories or an endless torment he was trapped in. Before me, he was standing on a lush green lawn, his worn-out shoes brushing against the grass as if testing whether the ground beneath him was real. I could feel his thoughts, his consciousness bleeding into mine. I'm home. I'm standing on my own lawn. Confusion flickered across his face, but behind it, I saw a fragile sliver of hope. As if he believed he had just woken from a nightmare and everything horrific from before had merely been an illusion. He ran straight toward the simple two-story house ahead of him, the door swinging open as if welcoming a long-lost traveler back from a long journey. But the moment he stepped inside, darkness swept over the entire space, swallowing the light, and from the shadows, two monstrous creatures emerged. They were shaped like mutated alligators, their hunched backs covered in rough, scaly skin, their jaws lined with long, razor-sharp teeth, dripping with saliva. He froze, his body trembling, as if his instincts were screaming that he had just made a terrible mistake. But it was too late. The two creatures began speaking in a grotesque, unearthly language, a sound so eerie and unnatural that it felt like it didn't belong to this world. Their voices dripped with malice, forming a nightmarish melody that no human could ever mimic or comprehend. Then, in a sudden flash, they transformed. Before me, a radiant golden angel appeared, shimmering as if forged from the most precious metal. Its eyes gleamed with an enchanting glow, luring anyone who gazed into them. Simultaneously, another figure materialized, the Angel of Death. The golden angel spoke to the man in a voice unlike anything from Earth. It was more than just speech. It was a haunting symphony of song, music, and an unexplainable energy, something so deeply compelling that it seeped into the very soul of the listener. The moment the voice rang out, he was drawn in, his eyes filled with awe and longing, as if this was what he had been waiting for his entire life. The door to the house burst open, and like a man entranced, he rushed up the stairs and fell to his knees, bowing in worship before the false angel. The golden angel lifted him up, caressed him with deceitful gentleness, then with a commanding sweep of its hand, everything around us changed. The house vanished, the green lawn disappeared, the wooden walls crumbled into nothingness. In its place stretched an endless sea of people, faces extending as far as the eye could see, all the way to the horizon. The golden angel raised a hand, its voice resonating with the authority of a king. "Preach the message I have given you." He looked down at the crowd, and I felt an uncontrollable exhilaration rise within him. I could feel it, the intoxicating pleasure of being worshipped, the thrill of standing on a pedestal bathed in false glory. As he began to speak, the golden angel lifted 6 strange symbols into the air, floating like ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. With each sentence he uttered, one of the symbols lit up and flipped, but it turned in reverse, as if his words were twisting the truth into something else. But just as he was reveling in his false grandeur, a chilling laugh echoed from the golden angel. Its face began to change, its smile stretched unnaturally, warping into a grotesque, twisted grin. Drool oozed from between its jagged teeth, and its eyes flashed with an unmistakable malevolence. This was no angel. This was a demonic entity that had successfully deceived a fool. From below, the crowd suddenly erupted in furious screams. Their worship turned into rage. Like a violent storm, their voices surged in unison, echoing through the air in a deafening wave of wrath. "You're the reason we're in hell, you fat liar! Come down here so we can tear you apart!" The adoration they once had for him was gone, replaced by unrelenting hatred. Thousands of voices merged into one, an avalanche of fury crashing upon him, shaking him to his very core. He froze, his body trembling as realization dawned upon him. He wasn't preaching to devoted followers. He was standing before the very souls he had led to damnation. But the nightmare wasn't over. From the back of the crowd, the 2 alligator-like demons returned, but this time they weren't alone. They dragged his children forward. A small girl clutched a teddy bear, her innocent eyes staring up at him. Her voice was soft, fragile, but filled with immeasurable sorrow. "Father, why did you lie to us?" At that moment, hopelessness crashed upon him like a tidal wave, crushing every last remnant of his soul. He was no longer a preacher, he was no longer a leader. Now he was nothing but a man consumed by regret. A regret that could never be undone. But hell does not allow escape. The two demons lunged forward and began torturing his daughter right before his eyes, ripping apart the illusion, tearing down the falsehoods he had built his life upon. He screamed, fell to his knees and begged for mercy, but it was too late. His forehead slammed against the ground over and over, his blood pooling beneath him. But the more he bowed, the more the ground beneath him changed. From soft grass to sharp, jagged stones, slicing into his flesh, forcing him deeper into an inescapable nightmare. And then the scene reset. He was standing on the grass again. He was checking the ground again. He was running into the house again. And everything repeated. Forever. I panicked. I realized I could be trapped in the same endless cycle. I was terrified beyond words, knowing that this could be my fate too. Desperate, I cried out, my heart overflowing with a repentance I had rejected for years. Lord, please save me. The more I pleaded, the stronger my voice became, rising in a desperate crescendo. And then, a radiant light exploded into existence. The nightmare was not over yet, but I could feel a powerful shift. A blinding, radiant light suddenly engulfed me, banishing the crushing darkness that had weighed upon me. I felt my body become weightless, no longer trapped in the grasp of that monstrous entity. The physical pain vanished, and the fear that had eroded my mind dissipated like mist. I didn't know what was happening, but I could feel an incomprehensible power pulling me out of hell. I was no longer falling down. I was being lifted up. And then, as the light slowly faded, my surroundings blurred, and I felt my feet touch solid ground. I opened my eyes and found myself lying on the floor. Everything was eerily silent. No monsters, no screams, no cursed castle or tormented souls. There was only me, alone, on the floor of my own bedroom. I took a deep breath, my chest heaving with panic, every inhale feeling like it would tear me apart. My hands trembled as I tried to push myself up, but it felt as if every ounce of strength had been drained from my body. Everything I had just experienced was real. I had no doubts left. I had died, and I had been taken to hell, but somehow I had been pulled back. I had been saved. I didn't need an explanation. I knew who had rescued me. Not because I deserved it, not because I had done anything good, but simply because Jesus had never given up on me. I had turned my back on him, lived in sin, drowned myself in drugs and destruction, yet he had still reached out and pulled me from the abyss. I had been given a second chance, allowed to live again, and I knew I could not waste it. But just when I thought I could change, I fell into darkness once more. The terror of hell would not let me go. It clung to my mind, eating away at me day by day. I couldn't bear to be sober. I couldn't face the horrifying memories of the place I knew I would return to if I died again. I was so consumed by fear that I sank even deeper into drugs, not because I wanted to, but because it was the only way to forget. Life had no meaning for me anymore, and I no longer cared about my future. There was only one thought in my mind. If I die, I will go back to hell. Every day I would check my heartbeat hundreds of times, terrified that my heart would stop without warning. I couldn't sleep peacefully, couldn't enjoy anything. I lived in a constant state of panic. But God did not abandon me. A year later, one sentence changed my life forever. I was sitting with my ex-father-in-law, drowning in my usual fear and hopelessness. He looked at me, not with judgment, not with condemnation, but with a deep, sincere kindness. Then he said, "Jesus loves you more than you love my daughter." That sentence shattered every wall I had spent years building around my heart. For so long, I had believed I could not be saved, that my sins were too great, that I had strayed too far from God's mercy. But in that moment, I realized that Jesus had never let go of me. I was not beyond hope. I still had a chance. And in that exact moment, I made my decision. I walked away from drugs without a second thought, without rehab, without mental preparation. I cut it off completely, as if I had just woken up from a nightmare and realized I had another choice. I no longer wanted to run away. I no longer wanted to forget. I wanted to face the truth, that I belonged to God and that I needed to return to Him. I didn't know what would come next, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never go back to my old life again. After everything that had happened, I knew I couldn't keep this story to myself. This wasn't just a nightmare, nor was it a hallucination caused by drugs. It was a real experience, a terrifying journey that I had been allowed to return from so I could tell others. I started sharing it with the people around me, but most of them didn't believe me. Some thought I was crazy, while others dismissed it as the effects of years of drug abuse. But I didn't need human validation, because I knew what I had seen was real. One day, during a conversation with my ex-father-in-law, I decided to tell him everything. I told him about the eerie castle where false religious leaders were imprisoned, about the man I had seen, about the horrifying loop he was trapped in, and about the little girl clutching a teddy bear, asking him a question that shattered my soul. "Father, why did you lie to us?" I described the house, the lawn, the look of eternal regret on his face, and the strange symbols floating in the air as he preached to the raging crowd. My ex-father-in-law didn't interrupt me. He just sat there, listening quietly, his sharp eyes seeming to piece together every detail I recounted, as if connecting it to something he had already known. When I finally stopped talking, he didn't look surprised. He didn't express doubt. Instead, he silently opened his laptop, typed a few search terms into the search bar, and turned the screen toward me. The image on the screen made my blood run cold. It was the house I had seen in hell. Every detail matched perfectly. The simple two-story structure, the barn-like appearance, the exact architecture I had seen in my vision. A chill ran down my spine because I knew this was no coincidence. I had been there. I had seen it with my own eyes. My hands trembled as I continued scrolling down, and at that moment, my breath caught in my throat. There on the screen was a photograph of the children, dressed in the exact same outfits I had seen in my experience. Every detail was identical. Their clothing, their posture, even the hollow emptiness in their eyes. The moment I saw them, the memories crashed back. I remembered the furious cries of the damned, the curses of those who had been deceived, and the sheer terror on that man's face when he realized that his own family had been dragged to hell because of his lies. And then I saw his face. At that instant, a shock like lightning tore through me. It was him. The man I had seen in hell was not just another lost soul, not just a random sinner facing punishment. He had been a powerful figure, a man of great influence, someone who had led millions down the wrong path. I stared at the photo on the screen. Every feature of his face burned into my memory. So vivid it was as if I was still standing in front of him in that cursed place. There was no mistake. I had read his thoughts. I had felt his fear. I knew him better than anyone alive today. My ex-father-in-law typed a few more words onto the screen, then turned to me, his voice low but firm. "The man you saw was Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That name meant nothing to me before my experience in hell. I had never studied him. I had never read about him. I had never known who he was or what he had done. But now I knew him better than his own mother had known him. I knew what he had preached. I knew what he had promised. I knew how many souls he had deceived. And I knew he was paying the price for what he had done, a price that could never be repaid. I have been to hell. I have seen souls trapped in agony and despair, people who once believed they had their whole lives ahead of them, only to realize too late that there was no escape. I have experienced the sheer terror of knowing that I too should have been left there for eternity, if not for the hand of God reaching down to save me. And now I am here sharing this story not to scare you, not to judge you, but to warn you. Do not wait until it is too late. You still have a chance. You can still be saved. But none of us know how much time we have left. Tomorrow is promised to no one. Do not gamble your soul on a future that may never come. What are your thoughts on Nathan's story? Leave a comment and let us know. Share this story so that more people can hear the truth. And if you want to keep listening to real stories, powerful testimonies, and near-death experiences that can change lives, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Doing so doesn't just help spread this message, it could save someone's soul. Maybe yours, maybe a loved one's, maybe someone who desperately needs to hear this right now. Jesus loves you. He is waiting for you to come back to him. God bless you,